I'm Dr. Joseph MT, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai. This is the e-Pathshala project on religion and society, and we are now in module 17, which looks at the temple complex. The temple as a site of worship. It has got a structure. It has got an architecture. Now the architectural styles can be different from south to north and from east to west. But there are certain kind of commonalities that we see in the structure of the temple, especially the sanctum sanctorum, and who can go near the sanctum sanctorum, and then the kind of principles that need to be followed for the construction of temple, and the way that there are certain very structures for people to circumambulate the temple and things like that. So we are looking at temple complex as an entire mode of worship and an entire space of sacredness and the space of worship. And this is what we are going to see in this module. First, the temple site is selected and then ritually purified. Next stage is the erection of the temple on the ground plan. The ground functions as a sacred geometric design called the Vastu Purusha Mandala. Vastu means residence, while the Purusha is the cosmic man and the mandala represents a closed polygon. The Vastu Purusha Mandala is conceived on the square plan as a shape. The square usually is associated with the gods. The center of this square is inhabited by three most important gods of the Puranic pantheon, namely Vishnu, Shiva and Brahma. Vishnu is represented by the many avatars, while Shiva is represented as a human as well as phallic symbol or the lingam, while Brahma has all but vanished from the worship in temples. The Vedic divinities are subordinated to the periphery of the square and are generally symbolized as constellations or the nakshatra. These are followed by the Lokpalas or wardens of the four directions: Mahendra on the east, Yama on the south, Varuna on the west and Soma on the north. The Dikpalas, Indra, Agni, Yama, Niriti, Varuna, Marut, Kubera, Ishana, or guardian deities occupy the cardinal and intermediate directions. When a site is chosen for the building of a temple, the Sthapati or the chief mason is required to follow the Vastu Mandala. The ritual is marked by leveling the ground, purification as well as sowing seeds to signify the birth of a holy site, as well as the drawing of the mandala on the site. Most temples face the east in accordance with the rising sun, but some temples face west or south, as in the case of Vishnu. A basic Hindu temple consists of a womb chamber or the Garbhagriha, where the deity is installed, with a circumambulatory passageway around it called the Pradakshina Patha, a congregation hall or the Sabha Mandapa, an antechamber called the Artha Mandapa, and a porch. Towering the sanctum is the Shikhara, which is typically of three types. The Nagara style. The Shikhara is designed in curvy linear roof. The Khajuraho temples, Solanki temples of Gujarat and temples of Rajasthan belong to this group. The Dravida style. The Shikhara is a storied or tiered construction interspersed with miniature shrines. Temples from Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh belong to this group. The Vesarat style, that is a hybrid style where the Shikhara has a prominent vertical band on each of its angles and small replicas of the Shikhara positioned on an object resembling an altar. Temples of the Deccan, such as that of the Ambarnath in Mumbai, belong to this group. Origin and development of the temple. The beginnings of the temple building is generally associated with the rule of the Guptas, 4th to 6th centuries, who ruled the Gangetic heartland and were considered as patronizers of the classical form in art and literature. Unlike the earlier Vedic worship, which centered on a fire altar built for the purpose of yagna and later destroyed, the Puranic temple was a solid, permanent structure built for Puranic gods as their home and places of worship. The concept was not altogether new, since there has been suggestions that deification of Puranic deities in human form and shrines built of either wood or bamboo dedicated to deities did exist from Kushana periods. Temples also arose when local deities or heroes were absorbed into the Puranic pantheon. Yashman analyzes this process of Hinduization of a tribal deity and its development as a supra-local deity venerated in Hindu temples. Typically, this process would occur in those areas with a sizable tribal population and its contact with caste society and the daily worship of the deity. Such a deity would have been a natural stone or may only be a wooden post and would require animal sacrifice performed by a non-Brahmin priest who may also be a mediator or bhagat of the deity. The process of Hinduization would commence with donations of land or ritual articles for regular puja, placing of an icon or image in place of the anti-conical symbol, building a structure over the deity and finally replacing the non-Brahmin priest with the Brahmin one, and subsequently transforming the form of worship from sacrifices to offerings of flowers, food and coconuts. Such a process of Hinduization of tribal deities is visible in the case of Jagannath, Lingaraj and Stambeshwari, or in all tribal deities of Orissa, the Vithoba cult of Maharashtra, the Khandoba cult of pastoral tribes of Maharashtra, and the cult of mother goddesses in many parts of India. In the Hinduization of the goddess, sometimes a consort is added like Shiva, and this allows for her complete absorption into Puranic Hinduism. Similarly, temples in early medieval India were also constructed as royal court centers, such as that of the Jagannath Puri in Orissa, Eklinga temple in Mewad, Tanjavur in Tamil Nadu, Virupachaka temple and Meenakshi temple in South India. The royal cults emerged as a symbiotic relationship between monarch and the sacred center, wherein the deity became the ruler of the region and the king his representative. In the case of the Jagannath temple, Kulke notes that Anantavarman Kodaganga, an important Ganga king, constructs a temple to Lord Jagannath on imperial scale with land donations, great annual festivals and daily rituals on a grand scale. A series of inscriptions between 1230 to 31 show that his grandson Anangbhima III acknowledges Lord Jagannath as the overlord Samraj of Orissa and renounces his own consecration to proclaim that he would only as Lord Jagannath's deputy. Kulke notes that such an action not only allows for greater vertical legitimization in newly conquered regions, but also a horizontal legitimization over other rival Hindu rajas for imperial heritage. Similarly, another Orissa king of the Gajapati dynasty constructs the Sun Temple and Konark, and the sculptures in the temple show the king kneeling upon his knees in front of the god. The Gajapati rulers of Kurda and Puri till today call themselves Sevak of the Lord, often assuming quasi-priestly functions. It was this Sevak function that provided the main legitimization to Puri Rajas to interfere in temple matters. The Gajapati Rajas also used this position to threaten their political opponents with the wrath of the state deity, as well as control their feudatories by allowing or disallowing royal privileges at the temple. Rajarajeshwar temple in Tanjavur was similarly set up as a deliberate act of royal policy by the Chola king Rajaraja I. Architecturally, the temple came to represent a central ceremonial complex dominating the deity. Now we go to the rituals performed in the temple. The temple is the abode of the home of the living God, and therefore commands all those daily activities that surround a living person, except that these are performed by the temple priests as rituals throughout the day. The ritual begins with the waking of the deity with chants, mantras and music. The deity is bathed and robed in garments and precious ornaments. The deity is anointed with scents, perfume, flowers and sandalwood, and incense burnt in their presence. Then the Naivedya Bhoga or food offering is made. These activities are repeated in the noon and other times of the day, with the evening rituals of Sandhya Puja and the midnight rituals with which the deity is made rest. All these rituals are performed by the priests in the womb chamber or the Garbhagriha and form part of 16 great offerings or the upacharas. The ritual requirements and method of performing such rituals are laid down in the various sectarian agamas. Once the rituals are completed, vibhuti or sacred ash, kumkum, vermilion and prasad is distributed amongst the devotees. The devotees do not directly participate in these daily rituals, but may witness them from the halls and join in the arti ritual and the singing of the bhakti songs. The individual devotee comes to the temple for darshan and archana and witnesses the various rituals. The devotee also makes a circumambulation or pradakshina around the main chamber or the subsidiary shrines in the clockwise direction. Sometimes individuals may request private pujas to thank the deity for fulfilling the vows of the devotee. Coconuts, oil, flowers and other objects are presented into the deity. Many a times these objects are precious remarks or precious made of gold or silver. In the Brahminical temple, the puja is generally carried out by Brahmin pujari with Sanskrit mantras and verses, and the bhoga and prasada is generally vegetarian food, while in non-Brahmin temples the local priests of non-Brahmana caste perform the puja and necessarily require meat and animal sacrifice. The pujas in the temple can be divided into two kinds. The first is the puja for private purposes, and the next is the public pujas performed for well-being of the world. There are some ceremonies that occur regularly and are often called festivals or jatras. These consist of processions and enactments of myths associated with deity and are often spectacular. Some of these festivals include the Chittari festival of the goddess Meenakshi, wherein the myth of the goddess is reenacted. Carts of 15 feet are pulled with ropes by devotees and she is married to Lord Shiva. Jagannath temple, Rath Yatra is similarly a festival wherein massive carts with the moving image or the Kalanti Pratima of Jagannatha, Balabhadra and Subhadra are paraded in the streets. In the Vaishnava temples, grand festivals involving the community participating of food and the Anakut festival is celebrated. Now we go to what we call the temple economy. The ritual of yajna in Vedic Brahminism was replaced by dana or gift giving to Brahmin families in Puranic Hinduism as an instrumental means of exchange and distribution of wealth. Thus gifts of land, gold, cattle and other precious items were routinely given by the political and economic elite of the society to Brahmin families. However, by the post-Gupta period, donations to Brahmin families were replaced by donations to temples erected and patronized by a wider section of society. Donations were also made for a number of reasons such as fulfillment of a vow, act of piety, etc. A temple was a major regular consumer of articles of everyday use such as grains, coconuts, flowers, oils, as well as consumer precious items such as silk, gold, jewels and even elephants and horses. Local merchants and traders had to provide for them, trade for them as well as for camphor, aromatics, silks, jewels, etc. While weavers provided cloth, oil mongers, oil, and shepherds and cowherds for their daily kind of products and ghee. All these groups are Champaka Lakshmi notes were brought under the ambit of temple trade, and not only did they integrate various faraway lands into the trade network centered on the temple, but also improved their status within the society by claiming to be donors of a precious temple. As grants accumulated, the temple in turn would become an employer and a patron of various activities. Since land was mainstay of the temple economy, projects of land and reclamation and improved forms of cultivation was unknown to them, undertaken by the temple. Improvements in the migration facilities such as building water tanks, canals and few new roads were also mentioned in the temple manifesto. The temple provided a means of livelihood and a number of categories of people. They included priests, various Brahmins, non-Brahmins, elite groups acting as executives and administrators. Let us look at one example of various ways of income in a temple. The Jagannath temple gives us a glimmer of hope, of how the temple would have made an income apart from regular donations. They generated an income from the lands owned by the temple. The temple sold coconuts and paddy in their open market. It leased out fishing nets in tanks owned by the temple and also leased out stone quarries. It also earned through the entrance tickets as well as the sale of the Mahaprasad, etc. Lise McKean has studied a special relationship between that Swaminarayan temples have with mercantile communities in Gujarat. She notes that some of the business elites' ethics are woven into the tenets of the religion itself, such as careful business practices, such as saving for the future, balancing income and expenditure, Amarnath, formalizing business within in presences of witness within through legal contracts, and to bring account books to the temple to be blessed. Now we go to the next kind of a section which talks about the Mathas, which we already have mentioned in an earlier module on the renounces tradition. The Mathas, monastic orders in ancient India, had already been established by Buddhists and Jains. While the Brahminical tradition, we find the emergence of such monastic orders based on the ascetic principle and a linkage of spiritual gurus emerging all over early Middle India. David Lawrence's work on the Kapalikas and Kalamukhas to Pashupata form of Shaivism reveals their influence in the north, Gujarat and Karnataka. The Kalamukha priests who served as priests and of temples and were associated with royal houses as their proprietary guru. In South India from 12th century onwards, many of the Shaiva Mathas were headed by non-Brahmin preceptors who promoted the Shaiva Siddhanta school as well as the Shaiva Bhakti. They thus received that kind of attention from all sections of society. The heads of such mathas were responsible also for making the agamas as the doctrinal basis of temple ritual. The mathas had numerous functions such as the study and teaching of religious doctrines and the practicing of austerity. They also had to look after pilgrims and the feeding of Shaiva ascetics as well as the organization of rituals and festivals. Hospitals and animal welfare shelters were also attached to such mathas. The mathas also functioned as an educational institution and imparted learning in the traditional 18 Vidyas. Shaiva mathas would impart learning of Shaiva philosophy and related subjects. Sometimes libraries or Saraswati Bhandars were attached to the mathas. Mathas emerged as rich land-owning institutions and controlled the agricultural processes and redistribution of land and revenue from land. They assisted in introducing agriculture in non-agricultural areas and reclaimed land. The matha also encouraged investments in trade and was patronized by powerful trading guilds of South India. Later mathas of the Vijayanagara period tended to be dominated by Brahmin preceptor groups from both the Shaiva or the Smarta and Vaishnava tradition. The profits of these mathas were exclusively drawn from a Brahmin constituency. Although the pontiffs of these mathas were world renouncers, they command considerable power by controlling and administrating temples. Mines and Gauri Shankar's study of Jayendra Saraswati Dasangracharya of Kanchi Kamkoti Pitha shows how the Shankaracharya uses temple rites and the theatre of publicly confirmed ritual honors to dramatize his leadership and establish a mainline alliance. Schisms and gastrosemantics in the Brahmin mathas. Schisms in the Sri Vaishnava tradition. Sri Vaishnavism sacred centers were established by Ramanuja in the sacred centers like Tirupati, Kanchi and Srirangam. The schism between the northern, that is the Vattakalai, and the southern, Tenkalai, schools occurred between 14th and 15th centuries and is considered as a fallout of the reformist activities of Ramanuja, who tried to include many non-Brahmin elements into the temple worship, ritual and administration. Gastrosemantic. The food that is offered to the deity is termed as Naivedya, and when it is retrieved, it is transformed into prasada or the grace of the deity. This is then redistributed among the devotees. However, the act of consuming the prasada is highly structured, often along caste lines. In the Udupi Matha, as studied by Rao, there were areas for consuming the prasada. Brahmin invitees and the Matha sannyasis, while the latter is restricted to Smarta and Madhava Purohits, Vidwans and Madhava Brahmins who teach at the Sanskrit college. while the Bhojanshala is open to all devotees irrespective of caste. He observes that all the subhuman, all the at the Mitsthana and Choki, the food is like Brahmin home, while at the Bhojanshala, the food is like that is of a restaurant. Priesthood in the temples. In the hierarchies of Brahmin caste, domestic priest or the Purohits rank highest, the temple priest rank second, and funeral priest are ranked the lowest. There is also a non-Brahmin priest or the pujari for the village deities. Usually, temple priests are sexually active married householders. Fuller gives a very detailed description of the priesthood in the Meenakshi temple, the largest temple in India dedicated to goddess and spouse of Shiva, situated in Madurai in Tamil Nadu. In the Meenakshi temple, the priesthood is divided into two heads, the Vakira Pantiyas and the Kulashekharas. Now, the temple is also a center of deed distribution, with people making donations, and then this is distributed to other people. Now, there has also been talk about temple reform at the colonial conquest during the British times and then later. We also know about the reform movements which are called the temple entry movements that happened in South India in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Conclusion, Module 17. We have in this module looked at the temple complex. The temple is the center of worship and ritual for the Hindu community. And we have looked at the different ramifications of this with regard to ritual and worship. Thank you.